Here we are again at base camp. Welcome to the Metaphysical Gamer, part 2. And while we're warming our hands around the campfire here, last time we introduced very briefly the concept of the shadow, but we haven't gone into it yet. And also, there's a few other subjects that we need to go into if we're going to discuss being and what that is. And I think we'll just do that as a series of different videos and try to concentrate on one aspect of it at a time. Well, we kill robots. So, now I've warmed up from the fire, it's time to leave base camp again and go out into the unknown. Now, as usual, I've been thinking about a lot of things since our last video, about the true nature of what being is and what it all really means, and how that changes depending on what we decide it is for ourselves in any given moment. Yeah. And the thing is, if you pay attention to yourself in mindfulness for long enough, you'll see that whatever that thing is, it constantly changes. It's never the same thing. It's a different thing depending on the configuration of your mind at any given moment. Which basically means that none of us are consistent. So I think one of the important quests of being, in terms of efficient survival, is getting a hold of that process. Figuring out how to become consistent. Oops, I've been spotted. Oh yeah. Whoa. This possibly isn't a good place to be, stuck on top of a mountain where he can shoot me easily. He's predictably he'll fire a rocket now. Oh wow. Maybe not that predictable. Ouch, can't take too many more hits like that. Time to retreat. So, how do you get consistent then? What is consistency? I suppose it's like being able to say you can come back with certainty to some part or pattern in your mind consistently, and it will be the same. It won't have altered its texture or its meaning, either in some emotional or intellectual level. It can be relied upon to be the same pattern. So, what can you say in terms of your own internal thought is a safe pattern like that? Or is it all transient? Is it all open to constant reinterpretation in the moment, depending on the state of your mental soup? Or can you, using some system of thought or meditation or just some system of mindful self-awareness, to create a pattern or patterns of consistency within yourself and utilise them to the benefit of your potential? And if you can't do that, why not? What is it that's stopping you? Is it external factors? or is it internal factors, or is it a combination of both? I mean, you can really mitigate to a certain degree for external factors by responding to them with a set of reactions, but mitigating an internal subjective reality when you really look at it mindfully isn't like operating on the same levels of certainty with the same sort of concrete natures. If you keep reassigning different values to the same things over time because you're not able to be consistent. And if you're not able to be consistent, it's because there's something up with the communication process, or there's something up with the system that you're using or basing your reality upon. And that could be in a number of ways, from internal states of mind and how you categorize reality, to how you externalize those subjective principles to active processes in the world that you do or don't benefit from, or could not benefit more or less from, depending on how you change the subjective realities that you understand them to be. And if you need to question that fundamental process, and I think we fundamentally do, it's because of this concept of honesty, which is a very relative thing as well. Because it's one thing to believe you're being completely honest, and it's another thing to be completely honest. In fact, the gulf between those two states can be immense. And so, in the quest for honesty, or to even find a true basis for what honesty might be, how to receive honesty, how to give honesty, how to be honest, everything to do with honesty that matters. And honesty is the important thing, because there has to be something which operates at the basis to create the integrity in our communication systems, and that is honesty. Can't be anything else that I can see. So then it becomes a case of determining, ouch, I'm in trouble here, run. How do you assess what honesty really is? Not only externally but internally. It gets harder for me to think when I'm killing robots. But when I really looked into that process, I found that most of the times when I thought I was being honest, I really wasn't. And others really are. So, looking for a basis in reality, for some real way to measure, to define, to share the basis of that honesty with other people and internally in myself. So I would say one of the really big pillars, if you like, of being has to be honesty. And the nature of self-delusion in the shadow, which we haven't defined yet, but we'll have to go on and really get into the nuts and bolts of that too. But without defining it yet, and yet including it inside our definition of being, this is what stops us being able to be truly honest, because the shadow within us operates from the unsaid, and we in our internal dialogue, not speaking everything through our mouths, but thinking everything in our minds. There is a division in our internal dialogue between those two states of dialogue, between the external things that we speak and the internal things that we think. And so we become used to hiding our internal truths, if you like. We don't just speak everything that we're thinking. I don't think anyone does. And those who do, we quickly lock them up because we're scared of them and we think we call them insane. Yeah. Maybe I led to a conclusion there. Pardon me. So, if I don't have this internal honesty, then I have no way to have an external honesty either. So honesty is important for two reasons now. It's important because of your internal reality, and it's important because of the external reality that you exist in. Both realities depend upon this honesty, in other words. And the shadow within us, from the unsaid, in its connection, corrupted connection to our states of being, effectively becomes the dark projectionist. What do I mean by that? Well, what do you think consciousness is? Have you ever thought about it? Like, we're watching this computer game right now, and my consciousness is seeing a screen, and on the screen is this image of a world that doesn't exist. And yet, it's really compelling, isn't it? With the trees and the stars and all of the little things that it gives the information to my brain. My brain comes to the conclusion that it's a forest I'm running in, with depth and meaning and atmosphere and consequences, right? But you and I know this isn't real. And the point I'm making is that the mind itself and the system it uses, the only system it has to generate an image of reality, is actually an internal one. A base. And locked, press key. Yeah, right, well, so my shadow didn't really want me talking about that there, so it made me forget what I was talking about, which is how that goes. It'll take me a minute to get back to where I was. Oh yeah, immersion in reality from the perspective of the mind is no more real in terms of its internal context and the subjective result of its mechanisms that produce it than this computer reality is real. And you will or will not be able to believe me when I say that right now, depending on your position about what you think is real. And it can be quite unnerving if no one's ever given you that idea for the first time, that maybe everything that makes you up is something that you made yourself. Maybe that's not the best way to put it. I'll have to think a bit more about that while we go down this hill, if I won't kill myself. Let me try and explain it again. So you've got this brain, right? And from the point it's born to the point it dies, it's never seen the world, and it never will. All the information it gets is through its senses. But all the information that comes from the senses is converted into information, which is fed from the parts of the brain where the information is processed to the parts of the brain where it is perceived to the parts of the brain where it is processed. So all of the things that the brain does are effectively post-production, in the same way that a video card has to post-produce this reality on the screen. It's no different really, except the medium is different. So what that means is that everything that's in your head, and everything that can be in your head, everything that has been, everything that is, and everything that ever will be, is a subjective, post-produced construction of reality. And it's not actually reality itself. So I'll let you think about that one for a second. And then we'll go into why that matters, perhaps, or what it means. Four of them out there. Who's on this side? Okay, so this is going to be a bit of a battle. And there's a harvester over there, or a tank. That's a harvester. No, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a tank. So you've got this brain, and everything that's ever put together has been put together by itself after the fact. And it doesn't have a mechanism to do it any other way. Oops, that's not good. I need to try and outflank these guys because they're coming. Sometimes I wish you could run a little bit faster. They're right behind me, alright. Okay, here we go. But that's not how it feels to be alive, is it? It doesn't feel like that's what your brain is doing. Feels like it's all happening real time, like this computer game does. That there's no post-production work going on, that there's no post-processing that isn't being pieced together by your brain into some shape inside itself that isn't reality. Just a very good interpretation of it. and a very good illusion that it's happening in the moment right now. If you want to go with that and say, well, that's my limitation and that's my reality and I can't do anything but work with this set of tools I've been given in nature, that's completely correct and completely true. You can only, in a sense, work with what you've got. However, that is to assume that the brain that you have is some tacit butler, just serving you information in a neutral context to your benefit, there for your service, with a smile and a monocle in one eye, like Alfred's Batman, Batman's Alfred, whatever way you want to put it, faithful to the end. That's what it is to have a brain. It's just there to serve you. It doesn't have any ideas or impulses of its own. It's only there to do what you tell it, and to feel what you want to feel, and to define the experiences that you want to have. And yet, that isn't the experience of being alive, is it? If you look at it mindfully. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I'm never getting away for that. You have to keep decreasing the angle in a spiral faster than he can get his gun on me, see? But this means I get closer and closer to him as I'm doing it. Oh, nearly. This is it. This is where he gets me. Oh, just. Whew. Jeez, I got myself right into the battle zone here. I'm in trouble. I better get some. Yeah, no medikits. Kits. That's great. Ah, blown to bits. Okay then. What was I talking about? Yeah, okay. You've killed me. How many times are you going to kill me again? Ouch. These robots just don't like us. So, this discourse started off at the point of honesty, and it has to go on a loop back to that. And just to summarise, the reason why it started there was because I came to the conclusion, or can we safely say we yet, that we both agree that that particular thing is true? That without a basis in honesty to conduct ourselves internally and externally, we can't create any meaningful patterns that we can rely upon. And also, if our brain is assembling patterns which are what you would say coherent because they are conducive or they go in the direction of potential, versus a mind that creates patterns that aren't coherent, decoherent, that creates patterns which go against the direction of potential, when the true nature of the mind is to be an efficient survival mechanism, and determining the efficiency of that mechanism is to look at these processes honestly. or to fail to look at them honestly and not to be able to access your potential. So there's a spectrum of potential going out in one direction and going all the way to zero at the other end, or negatives, I guess, even. I don't know, I really need to think about that. Maybe that's not a good metaphor. So we start off at a position where we need some sort of internal honesty and external honesty so that we can have internal integrity in our internal patterns, and external integrity in terms of the forms of our communication. But then that goes on to the nature of subjectivity and how the mind, in its post-production and construction of reality, albeit with a very compelling illusion of that happening in the moment, is telling itself what it wants to hear in the process of that self-construction. And so honesty becomes what the brain wants to tell itself, rather than... So, in other words, honesty in that context becomes subjective honesty. It's not objective honesty. Therefore, in other words, the mind can become self-deceitful in its ability to tell itself that something is true when it isn't. And the mind also doesn't have an external mechanism to determine when it's being true or not. But it seems to have an internal shadow mechanism that will delude it into believing it's true, and will also equally delude it into believing it's not true, for reasons of its own, because the mind is not a benign butler. There are elements of the mind that are resistive and that we do kind of share our nature of being with, and that it's navigating the true contours of that process in terms of honesty, which is the beginning part. And so that's why honesty is important, because without that, nothing can be constructed internally or externally. So if you accept that that is the basis of... So I'm killed by not concentrating. What really matters in terms of being, in terms of not only in terms of being and its potential, or lack of potential, which is the only thing that matters in the context of a survival mechanism. And that's breaking reality and being down to the common denominator of survival being the important factor. That's not taking into account all the subjective factors that could be injected by a decoherent mind imagining that something is an important factor. So it may just be that the part of the problem is that we all have a different definition for that too. And that's why I had to do a series of videos to talk about this, because clearly it's not straightforward, it's quite complicated, and it's going to take a long time to go over it and truly work it out. So that's what I've got on honesty so far, or that's all I can think of for the moment. And I often catch myself when I'm in my own shadow believing I'm being completely honest, but in reality being anything but honest. And we're going to get to that. We'll move around through the next couple of videos to talk about the shadow itself, but initially he just brought in reinforcements, didn't he? Don't know what that is, okay. Shot his front shield right off him. He's down. He just sits there. He's getting close for a rocket strike. There it goes. Woof. I knew it was coming, but I anticipated it. Let's just flank him. Oops. Oh yeah. Take that. Farmlands region. Whoever your name is, or was. Straight to Robot Hill with you. So, if anyone else has any ideas about honesty and they'd like to say something in the comments, I'd appreciate that greatly. Whoa. Can't trade blows with these guys at 14%. I'm running. This is where I get shot in the back. Zigzag. Uh-oh. Yeah, well, it's quite interesting because the more under pressure I get, the less I can think. I guess that's how it works. Take that. Try thinking now, robot. Whoops. Gas attack. Ouch. Take that, Muppet face. Oh, you, where'd you come from? Fighting for my life now, that's it. Done and dusted. Ouch. Okay. Just wondering, is there anything else I really need to say about that before I end this video? Yeah, there is. I was thinking there. This all happened because no matter how honest I was being or how convinced I was being honest, no matter when I thought I was being honest, there was always a voice in the back of my mind saying, you know what, you're not being for real. Because my internal dialogue always knew the true extent of what I was really thinking, even if I didn't always say it to the world. And you can either go on being ignorant to the fact that you do that, or you can wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm not doing that anymore. I really want to wake up. I really don't want to be controlled by some asshole shadow inside myself, simply because I'm too scared to face some element of reality, and I've practiced giving into security under pressure. And some part of me is only too delighted to receive that negative energy that I have given up that should have been my power. And this is what we're all doing to that degree. And it's a shame because we're diminished for it. And without that internal honesty, we'll never come to that conclusion or be able to keep it consistently. And without other people having the same mechanism for being able to believe that we can be that honest, they'll never receive that honesty. And we'll never be able to give it to them. And so we'll always be stuck without the benefit of it. And I can't have that. I need to do whatever the necessary evolution is internally to get beyond that limitation in myself for the sake of what a glimpse could be in terms of my potential, your potential, everybody's potential, if I individually didn't do that and we collectively didn't do that as a species. So honesty is a very, very good starting point as far as I'm concerned. So, and if at any point during this conversation, during these videos, it becomes anything less than honest, or some decoherence creeps in, I would really appreciate it if you would make some sort of comment in the comment section and keep me real, because this is part of the problem. Sometimes in shadow you don't know what being real is anymore. When you have convinced yourself in your subjective reality that something is the case, and I've gone on and proceeded in a gumption trap to assume that is the case, and lost time and potential and something, other things that are really important because of it. So you want to go on doing that for the rest of your life, and to one day, and the silent sort of true knowledge inside yourself that you never released about the real truth about that, silently building up, with you being the only person that knows what the real truth is? Wouldn't you rather just be honest across the board and not have to carry that burden at all? Because I suspect that's what real honesty is, and that's not an easy thing to practice, is it? When you spent your whole life giving it security under pressure and not even being aware of it. So I don't want the inside of my mind to end up like this computer wasteland that I'm rowing about in here because I wasn't strong enough to deal with the fires inside my own fear. Right? So there you go. Maybe that's all I can really say about honesty. See you in the next video, folks.